called them up and they said...
Not in a Utah big love cow.
So we called him up and he got ordained and was nice enough to actually preside over the ceremony. So we've got 3 beers actually. We wanted to make this quite special. And to be quite honest, it was an entire risk factor on 2 of the beers. One of them I know is good, so I'll talk about that one right now. The cask here, I was out with actually Caroline and TJ, our local rep, and we were going around town, and I might have had 1 or 2 too many beers. And I said, oh yeah, I can do a cask, no problem for Asheville Beer Week. So and I looked and I was like, I'm not going to be at the brewery for another 2 weeks, and this is going to be absolutely just right on time. So when I got home, I went to the cellar, and I tasted my way through the cellar, and I was like, oh, this Pilsner, this is a great, great Pilsner. Caroline overnighted me a couple things. She overnighted me coffee from Dynamite Roasting in Black Mountain, and she overnighted me the Hawk Creek, is it? Hawk Creek local honey. And so this is actually our Pilsner with done cold side with the coffee and repitched with actually ale yeast in a lager beer. I normally like to do that because it brings some fruitiness up, and it was primed with the honey as well. Honey can be a little bit of a risk factor because it can actually have some bacteria in it, and it could go a little squirrely on you. And I go to taste this beer, and it's flat as can be. It's like, oh crap, because I made it from a few of these things. So an emergency repitch and prime on this, and holding the truck back for a few days to make sure I got some fermentation. And I told these guys, don't serve it until I get there. I want to make sure it's good because I don't want to serve that beer.
Only a Grossman can hold a truck.
So that's what's going on in this beer. It's quite good. So it was all done cold side, so you don't get any of the astringency of the coffee. The next beer is actually my wedding beer that I brewed for my wedding. And my favorite number is 5, so there's 5 malts, 5 hops, 5 alcohol, 55 IBU, 2.5 gravity, volume to volume CO2. And I actually did, I selected 5 people, and he was one of them, to make 5 different casks. So this beer was designed to be good on its own or great on its own, and actually be cask conditioned 5 separate ways. And through sort of our whole lifestyle and friendship, we had this little project that we've been only working on for 2.5 years called Brux. And I think I've spoken enough, so I'm going to actually turn it over to Vinnie to speak on Brux.
Yeah, well, first, it's great to be here. Natalie, my wife and business partner, we walked to your town today. It was awesome. We had a great time. Tasted a bunch of local beer, and yeah, it's cool. It's really cool to be here. And with Brian and Gina moving here, we'll be visiting quite often, I'm sure. So yeah, Brux, as Brian said, it's 2.5 years in the making. The beer was literally born in Gina and Brian's kitchen. They live a little bit out of town in Chico.
We live in the middle of nowhere.
They live in the middle of nowhere, yeah. I was up there 2.5 years ago, and you know, it was just women went to bed. He and I were up drinking, and he goes, "We should do a collaboration." I'm like, "Yeah, that'd be cool." You know, I mean, who doesn't want to do a collaboration with Sierra Nevada? Going to Sierra Nevada for me is like going to Mecca. And if any of you here have been to Sierra Nevada and Chico, you know what I mean. When they build their facility here, you'll understand what I mean. They do everything right, and quality is always the very most important thing. And in California, they are so important to our beer scene, but I think that's for the whole United States as well. So Brian and I, that was that, and 6 months later I was back up there, and women had already gone to bed. It was Brian and I up drinking again late, and he goes, "We're not going to bed until we figure this thing out." And I said, "Okay."
I didn't say it as nicely.
No.
More swearing. Those of you that really know me swear a little bit more.
He doesn't have a filter sometimes. So we did get serious about it. We said, okay, we don't want to do anything either of us do at Russian River or Sierra Nevada. So hoppy beers were obviously out. Sour beers were out. I knew for sure that Brian's dad, Ken, would not allow bacteria in the brewery. We were drinking Orval, and it's a beer that we both love. It's a style that we both love, Brett finished beers. And I said to him, well, what's your dad how are you gonna deal with your dad? And he said, you just start brewing some R&D pilot batches at your brewery, and I'll take care of my old man.
And then he gave me my own brewery. Can you believe it?
And as Brian likes to say, you know, Brian starts getting a little bit of control of the business. You know, after 30 years, his dad, well, for 32 years now, his dad's been trying to keep Brett out of Sierra Nevada. He walks in, and the first thing he does is he brings in a wild yeast and wants to do something with it. So we settled on this style. I brewed little. We started brewing these pilot batches at our brewery on our little half barrel system, and that went for a year, if not more. Lots of trips to Sierra Nevada,
lots of trips to Russia.
And I got to say, all the trips up to Chico, Natalie stayed back and made sure that everything ran well, and she really is the backbone of our brewery. But anyways, once we nailed the recipe down, we turned the recipe over to Brian and Scott Jennings. Scott Jennings right now runs the pilot brewery in Chico, and you guys are lucky enough to get him here because he's moving out here. And Scott is, I think, he's the best brewer that I know in America. And the great thing for you guys is he makes the most amazing Pilsner. And I don't know if they're ever, will they even brew it in Chico now that he's moving out here?
Pilsner's here.
And this is the Pilsner that he's infused. But this beer on its own, this Pilsner, is amazing, and it's never the same beer twice. Scott's been working on this thing for like 5 years, and I don't expect that to change when he moves out here too. You don't think of Sierra Nevada and Pilsner, but it's a phenomenal beer, and it's Scott's baby. But anyway, so Brian and Scott started. They took my recipe, worked on it. There was a lot of heartache, and there was some great times, and there was one time that I almost pulled the plug on the project because we just couldn't get the flavors right at our brewery. But by the time the recipe got to Chico, it was pretty well dialed in. We just had to make it work on their equipment. And so at this point, I had already convinced Ken that, well, you know, you're already going to strip your bottling line apart once a year on their pilot bottling line, change all the parts out, and this is how we get around all the funky parts from the Brettanomyces yeast. For those of you who don't know what Brett is, or Brettanomyces, Brett for short, Brett's a really aggressive, invasive yeast. Once it gets, Brian likes to call it the cockroach of yeast because you can't get rid of it. And any porous gasket, it's very difficult to work with. Our friends are here from New Belgium tonight. They use Brett. They know exactly what we're talking about.
It's literally a Trojan horse in your brewery. If you get it out of control, you are in a world of hurt.
And that's Sierra Nevada, where they bottle condition all the pale ale. That means they have anywhere 300, 400, 500,000 cases of pale ale at any time. You get a little extra Saccharomyces in a bottle conditioned beer. It's not going to do anything because there's not going to be any sugar left. But Brett eats all the weird complex sugars that Saccharomyces, regular yeast, doesn't eat, and that could be a big problem at Sierra Nevada. So that was taken very seriously. The first time they requested Brett for me, I walked in with a growler, and the first thing they did was start Project Kill Brett, and that was how do we make sure that we kill Brettanomyces at Sierra Nevada. Through the process, though, we didn't have to infect the entire bottling line. We came up with this thing that we call the inseminator, and we injected 1.3 to 1.4 milliliters of Brett into every bottle on its own. So the bottles would get rinsed, CO2 filled, and just before they got corked, they would go by this sensor, this little an injector would shoot the bread into every bottle, so it alleviated all the problems that we'd originally worried about.
We got to build shit. We like building.
Yeah, Brian and Ken particularly are gadgets. They love gadgets, building shit. So with that said, we got it bottled. One of the critical parts of this beer is bottle age, so that the Brett's there. And so it's a bone dry beer. It's now just over 3 months old. It gets shipped in another few weeks to go out for distribution. And you guys are some of the first people to taste it. And I think unless Brian has anything else,
no, I mean,
you should start drinking it.
Yeah, like Vinnie was saying, this beer will change over time. So the beer you're tasting today is going to be different than the beer you taste in a month, 2 months, a year from now. with the amount that we made, we're expecting it to be on the shelf for roughly a day. So if you see some, punch it up. I would probably grab 2 bottles if you could. Most accounts will let you buy 2, not 3.
Always a salesman.
Yeah, but buy 1, drink 1, and then sell it. Or buy 2, drink 1, and sell it the other one. And that's the great part about this yeast strain is that this continues to change and evolve. And it's a really fun thing to work with.
And Brux is the strain. It's Bruxellanus. Brettanomyces bruxellanus. And I just want to finish with one thing. Brian and I have been friends for a while, a good amount of time, but this project has really solidified our friendship. And that's really what this beer is about. The friendship between Natalie and myself and the Grossmans. Not just Brian and Gina, Brian's wife, but Brian's parents. His sisters, you guys don't know what's gonna hit you when they move here. These are the nicest people in the world, and their word is their word, and everything they do is top notch, and they're the best people. And,